Okay, welcome back to Talking About Stoicism, where we go through the entire Enchiridion of Epictetus in the translation How to Be Free by Professor A.A. Long. And we have ended up at chapter 40, which is an interesting one. As soon as they are 14, women are called ladies by men. So when they see that their only prospect is to go to bed with them, they begin to make themselves up and place all their hopes on their looks. They need to understand that the true basis for being respected is to appear refined and modest. Epictetus is my personal favorite Stoic. Most people who study Stoicism find that they have a favorite, whether it's Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, or Epictetus, or Musonius Rufus. For me, it is Epictetus. Now, this is a very interesting chapter, and it sounds at the start that this chapter is going in a very specific direction. I'm very happy it does not. But I thought what would be very interesting is to also present you another translation of this chapter by Elizabeth Carter. And that's very interesting because she was part of the Blue Stocking Circle. So this is quite a number of years ago, but this was a lady who was basically in a women's rights movement, right? And she kind of went against... what do you call that? Like against the grain of the times. For example, she also was fluent in Latin and Greek, so she translates the Enchiridion as well. And she wrote for this chapter. I think it's nice because she makes it even a bit more polarized. Women from 14 years old are flattered with the title of mistresses by men. Therefore, perceiving that they are regarded only as qualified to give the men pleasure, they begin to adorn themselves and in that to place ill their hopes. We should therefore fix our attention on making them sensible that they are valued for the appearance of decent, modest and discreet behavior. I hope that when you are watching this, you do believe that women have the exact same rights as men do, because if you don't, please screw off. You see, I think it's very important that we make that very clear, right? And it's not just about men and women. These days people can identify or do identify as all sorts of different things, and I think all of that is absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your specific physical properties are. What matters is who you are, right? And what matters is who you are trying to be, how you handle life, how you make certain decisions, how you choose to benefit society. I think that is what you should be judged by, not whether you are a man or woman or something else. So I was happy to see that Epictetus, because when I started to read this I thought, I wonder where this is going. I appreciate that he says they need to understand the true basis for being respected is to appear refined and modest. Well, I don't know about the refined and modest bit, but I interpret that as meaning you judge for who you are, not what you are. Now I want to take this a little further. Epictetus' teacher was Musonius Rufus, and Musonius Rufus was a Roman of the equestrian order, so he was a sort of like a Roman knight, right? And he was also a teacher of philosophy. Now, some of his lectures are lost, but Cynthia King has translated what we have left of his in this book, Musonius Rufus. Now, you need to track this one down if you want it. I think you should go to Amazon because it's very hard to get in brick and mortar bookstores. So Musonius has a bunch of lectures that were recorded, and the third one is entitled by Musonius, from the lecture showing that women also should study philosophy, which I think is very relevant here. So I don't want to read you the whole thing because it's 3 pages of text, but here is a passage that I found very relevant. And interestingly enough, Musonius is very much pro-women studying philosophy, which is interesting in a time where there were very specific gender roles, but where there was not really any emancipation going on. In Roman times, it's a little difficult. So, very interesting that he defends this position, that women should have the same rights as men. And he says, this is specifically about women studying philosophy, to begin with, a woman must be able to manage an estate, to keep account of things beneficial to it, and to take charge of the household stuff. Now, of course, these are very traditional things. Let's accept that, but let's listen to what he says. I say that these things would be most characteristic of the woman who pursues philosophy, since each of these is a part of life, and knowledge concerning life is what philosophy is. Furthermore, as Socrates, quoting a verse from the Odyssey, used to say, the philosopher has as his goal investigating, quote, what evil and good has been done in your halls, unquote. But a woman must also be self-controlled. She must be free from sexual improprieties and must exercise self-control over other pleasures. She must not be a slave to desire. She must not be quarrelsome, extravagant, or vain. These are the characteristics of the self-controlled woman, as are the following: controlling anger, not being overcome by grief, and being stronger than every emotion. Philosophic study transmits these things. It seems to me, and this is interesting, that a person who has studied and practiced them would exhibit the most beautiful character, whether man or woman. What then? These things are so. Would not a woman who studies philosophy be just? Would she not be a blameless partner in life, a good co-worker and like-minded one, a careful guardian of husband and children, entirely free from the love of gain or grasping for too much? And who, more than a female philosopher, and it is entirely necessary for her to think thus, if she were really a philosopher, would think it worse to do wrong, insofar as it is more shameful than to be wronged? Likewise, who, more than a female philosopher, would think that suffering loss is better than taking more than one's share? And in addition, who, more than she, would love her children more than life? What woman would be more just than such a woman as this? Very interesting. So I think what is being said here is that a woman, like any other person, whether man or identifying as something else, should strive to be the best version of herself. And that is what arete, virtue in the Stoic sense of the word, is about. Being the most excellent version of yourself in everything you say and everything you do every day, all day. Not sometimes you're virtuous and sometimes you're not. If you want to be a Stoic, you should strive to be virtuous all the time. Do the right thing all the time. Say the right things all the time. Make the right decisions all the time, which is very difficult, which is why you might make mistakes, but you have to strive to try and do the right thing all the time, right? And in that regard, it doesn't really matter whether you are a man or whether you are a woman or whether you identify as anything else. What matters is you. You are you. And you have to live life, and you get to choose how to live life. And you can choose to live life in the best way possible to you. You can strive to make the biggest contribution to society you can make. You can strive to help others. You can strive to be a good person. And whether you are a man or a woman or something else does not matter. The only thing that matters is your choices, your decisions, your actions. And I always very much appreciated that the Stoics are so clear on this, because again, in a time when there were very, very few female philosophers, there were a few, but not a whole lot, the Stoics were quite clear on this. They say that Musonius is an important Stoic teacher. He explicitly says this: no women should study philosophy. They should do this. They should accept or should engage in a role that may not be traditionally considered to be appropriate for a woman. Of course, that sounds very judgmental, especially coming from a man, but I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make. In that time, it was not necessarily a natural decision for a woman to go and study at a school of philosophy, but Musonius encourages women to do so. And I think his reasoning, at least to me, it makes sense, because you become a better person. Forget about all the traditional roles you have. The point of a philosophy of life, like Stoicism or Cynicism or Epicureanism, whatever it is you prefer, I like Stoicism. The point is to be the best version of yourself, irrespective of whatever gender you associate with. And that's very important. And I was a little worried when my man Epictetus started with women are only there for men, etc. That's not a very healthy thought, I think. But fortunately, he qualifies that a little bit by continuing and saying, they need to understand that the true basis for being respected is to appear refined and modest. While the modesty, don't forget, modesty is one of the 4 cardinal virtues. So he's not necessarily saying, well, women should, on purpose, I'm phrasing it this way, women should know their place and be modest and be quiet. No, being modest is one of the 4 cardinal virtues. That's important to being a Stoic, to becoming a sage, right? Being on your path to be a sage, you have to be modest, you have to understand modesty, right? And of course you can interpret that as some sort of sexual modesty, etc. But in general, a wise person, a virtuous person in the mind of a Stoic should be modest, right? And I think when you apply these Stoic principles in your life, you can really become a better person. And again, it doesn't really matter what gender you associate with. What matters is only you. Your life. You get one life here, so use it. And use it well. Use it to do good. Man, woman, or something else. We're all people. We should all have the same rights, which we don't always have. But the only way to change that is to lead a life as well as you can lead it. To make those changes. To do change things. And Elizabeth Carter, whose translation I read to you earlier, was a great example of that. Someone who decides to make a difference. And to do study Latin. And to do study Greek in a time where that was considered useless for women. But she did. And her translation is right there. It can still be read. And that means that she has left that legacy, in addition to many other great things she has done. So there you have it. I hope this was useful. A Stoic view on men and women and their rights. That's all there's to it. I'll gladly see you again next week when we talk about chapter 41 of the Enchiridion.